What's the future hold?
I've signed a 3-book deal for 3 more Spider Shepherd books, so I'm halfway through one now. Going back to the UK in a couple of weeks and back to Ireland, and I'll finish it in Ireland. I'll be there for a couple of months finishing it. So I've got to do 2 more after that. I'm also developing another character, a private eye called Nightingale, which is, remember the old Dennis Wheatley books, the Black Magic books? I'm trying to bring that up to date, so it's a sort of black magic detective, and I'm fairly hopeful that might come off. And just, you know, well, I've been writing a book a year for the last 20 years. My publisher now wants 2 books a year, so I'm going to get myself into gear and try and do 2 books a year, certainly for the next 4 or 5 years.
That sounds a lot of work, having to do 2 books a year. Are you going to find that a strain?
It's actually not. When I was a journalist, I would easily write 1,000 words a day. Most days I'd write 2,000 words a day. A book, a good length novel, is 120,000 words. If you think about it, at 2,000 words a day, you could do 120,000 words in 60 days, which is 2 months. Now, okay, not many people can work under that pressure, but I could certainly do a book in 5 months, 6 months. Certainly in the last 20 years, I've spent a lot of time writing, but I've spent a lot of time relaxing as well and taking it easy. My publisher now is thinking that perhaps, you know, I should perhaps work a little bit harder, and yeah, it's fair enough. I think I can do a book every 6 months instead of a book every year.
Stephen, do you read?
I read less. I tell you, this is what happens when you're in the industry. When I was a journalist, I used to read, before I was a journalist, I read newspapers for pleasure. Like most people, certainly in England, I'd get 4 or 5 newspapers on a Sunday morning and just read them over breakfast and spend the day reading newspapers. Once you've worked as a journalist, you stop reading newspapers for pleasure. It becomes a job. When you write books, the same thing happens. You can't read for pleasure anymore. Or I can read a Le Carré and appreciate the writing, and read a Stephen King and appreciate the story. But I read it as a writer, so I'm looking for mistakes, which is the really annoying thing. I'm looking for spelling mistakes all the time. And that's partly because I was a sub-editor on newspapers, but partly because I'm a writer. I'm looking for errors in the plot, and you can usually find at least one. No, you know, books are never perfect. There's always a mistake. I'm always predicting what's going to happen. If someone puts a gun in a drawer on page 28, you know someone's going to pull it out towards the end of it and shoot somebody, so you're constantly looking for those lists. And then the same thing happened with TV. I used to love watching TV drama. I used to love it. I used to watch it all the time. That sort of ruined it for me now, because once you've watched it being filmed and you understand that everything is filmed with one camera, and that just because 2 people are talking on screen, in the real world they weren't actually talking at the same time, that everything has been intercut, then you start looking for mistakes, you start looking for the errors, you start looking for errors in the story and the plot, but also for things like, oh, he's got a scarf on there and the scarf was gone. Constantly looking for continuity errors. So TV drama has been ruined for me, and books have pretty much been ruined for me. So
Never write a book, never do a film, and you can enjoy life.
It does spoil the enjoyment. I read more non-fiction now. I read more biography. I read particularly histories of gangsters and police and stuff like that. So non-fiction is alright. It hasn't ruined that for me. But fiction, yeah, it's been pretty much spoiled for me.
And finally, just got to say, you're staying in Pattaya for a little while?
Yeah, I'm here for the rugby. It's the Pattaya 10s this weekend, so I'll be watching the rugby, and I'll be at Jameson's with the rugby team, sort of celebrating tonight and tomorrow, hopefully. But yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you today, and thank you very much for joining me.
Okay.
Thank you.